Lando Norris just exploded in frustration after learning that his entire Las Vegas race has been erased by a stunning disqualification. A microscopic reading under his car triggered a ruling so brutal that it destroyed his championship momentum in an instant. You are about to hear how this shock decision not only cost Norris everything he fought for but instantly placed Max Verstappen in the strongest position he has held all season. Stay right here because this twist is so powerful it could decide the 2025 World Championship. The moment the officials completed their inspection in Las Vegas, the atmosphere inside the paddock shifted from celebration to disbelief because the data taken beneath both McLaren cars revealed clear readings below the 9mm limit set by the regulations. This discovery did not erupt with drama on track. It unfolded quietly in the steward's room where measurements written in cold numbers carried more power than anything achieved in 50 laps of racing. The team that believed it had secured crucial points suddenly faced the reality that the result depended entirely on the thickness of a component smaller than the edge of a coin. As the findings were delivered to McLaren representatives, the seriousness became impossible to ignore. The skid blocks on both cars showed consistent values below the legal threshold, and the officials repeated the checks using certified equipment accurate to 1/1000th of a millimeter. Every reading stayed identical through each verification. When that level of precision remains unchanged across repeated tests, the rulebook leaves no opportunity for interpretation. The decision became automatic the moment the numbers appeared because regulations in Formula One are structured to treat technical breaches with absolute clarity. The shock traveled through the paddock within minutes because the disqualification of both McLaren cars in the same event is one of the rarest outcomes in modern Formula One. Engineers rechecked their calculations. Journalists recalculated standings. Rivals evaluated how the championship picture had been rewritten. Norris had believed he strengthened his grip on the title. Piastri believed he had protected his mathematical chances. Yet both outcomes were erased by the same measurement. These moments remind the entire sport that championships are not just shaped by overtakes and strategy but by the unforgiving precision of technical compliance. The timing of the ruling intensified the shock. The announcement arrived more than 4 hours after the checkered flag, when teams had already begun packing equipment and shifting focus toward Qatar. The race had ended, the podium had been taken, and the interviews completed. Nobody expected the standings to be overturned after midnight. Yet that is exactly what happened when the officials released their document confirming that both McLarens violated the regulation. The results of the event were redefined long after the engines had been switched off. This decision had an immediate effect on the championship because the points Norris and Piastri earned on track vanished completely. Before the ruling, Norris appeared to maintain a comfortable lead while McLaren held both of their drivers inside the title calculation. After the exclusion, the advantage collapsed to only 24 points, and Verstappen along with Piastri moved level behind him. The entire battle transformed not because of an on-track mistake but because of the technical reality recorded under the floor of each car. In Formula One, a fraction of a millimeter can define the shape of a season. As the teams left the circuit, the new tension became impossible to ignore. Norris went from confidence to frustration because the night that should have consolidated his championship instead destroyed his buffer. Piastri felt the sting of losing points but found himself tied with Verstappen in the standings. And Verstappen, who had expected only a slight gain, left Las Vegas knowing that the title had opened again. This was not simply a penalty. It was the moment that rewrote the entire trajectory of the championship and created a new psychological landscape for the final 2 races. The decisive element in the Las Vegas ruling came from the precise measurements taken underneath Oscar Piastri's car, because each reading matched the same conclusion. The front left section registered 8.96 millimeters, the front right came in at 8.74, and the rear right delivered 8.90. All 3 values sat below the 9mm limit required by the technical regulations. These figures were obtained using calibrated tools that capture incredibly small variations. When the numbers remain consistent across several attempts, the officials classify them as conclusive. That level of certainty left McLaren with no margin to argue intention, circumstances, or unexpected damage. Lando Norris's car produced an equally clear set of readings when the same inspection was carried out beneath his chassis. The front right reference measured 8.88 millimeters while the rear right recorded 8.93. McLaren representatives watched the entire process and immediately requested a repeat inspection to ensure that no procedural error occurred. The officials performed the checks again with additional team members present. The values did not shift even by the smallest measurable amount. In Formula One, this type of stability in technical data carries enormous weight because it demonstrates that the violation is not influenced by external factors but by the condition of the car itself. The regulation governing skid block thickness is among the most unforgiving in the rulebook because it serves as a core protection for aerodynamic fairness. When the floor of a car runs too close to the asphalt, it can generate additional ground effect and produce performance gains that do not belong to a legal setup. For this reason, the rule does not analyze how or why the wear occurred. It simply defines the legal dimension and applies the mandatory penalty once the measurement falls below it. Earlier cases from the season followed the same protocol, which established a precedent the officials were required to respect when evaluating the McLaren findings. The timing of the ruling created additional shock because the announcement came more than 4 hours after the race had finished. During that period, Norris and Piastri believed their second and fourth place results had strengthened their championship positions. McLaren personnel were already preparing equipment for transport when they were summoned by the officials for the final confirmation. Meanwhile, Verstappen had already left the circuit unaware that the standings were about to shift dramatically. Once the document was published, the paddock entered a state of recalculation as every team realized the significance of the decision. The final standings revealed exactly how much the disqualification changed the shape of the season. Norris fell from a projected 408 points down to 390, which reduced his lead from a comfortable margin to a narrow 24-point advantage. Piastri's total dropped to 366, which placed him level with Verstappen. The Dutch driver had gained nothing on track yet benefited more from the technical ruling than any driver involved in the race. The entire battle for the championship transformed not because of strategy or driver error, but because of a clear violation recorded under the floor of each McLaren. The psychological impact of these changes instantly altered the mindset of all three contenders. Norris moved from a position of calm control to one where every remaining lap of the season must be driven with caution and precision. Piastri faced the frustration of losing valuable points, yet discovered that his chance of the title remained intact since his deficit to Norris stayed identical. Verstappen gained a resurgence of belief because the mathematical path to the championship that appeared closed earlier in the night suddenly reopened. These updated facts created the foundation for a tense and unpredictable final phase of the season. The foundation of the disqualification begins with the behavior of ground effect aerodynamics, which define the current era of Formula One. These cars generate much of their grip through the airflow channeled beneath the floor, and that airflow remains stable only when the ride height is precisely controlled. McLaren explained that during the Las Vegas weekend the car experienced stronger than predicted vertical oscillations, commonly known as porpoising. These oscillations forced the floor to strike the surface repeatedly at high speed, which accelerated the erosion of the skid block. Over the length of the race, even a small increase in contact frequency can be enough to reduce the thickness below the required limit. The team emphasized that limited practice running made the situation harder to evaluate. The first practice session suffered interruptions due to weather and delays caused by infrastructure issues. With fewer laps at representative speed, the engineers lacked the data they typically rely on to fine-tune ride height for a circuit dominated by long straights and sustained aerodynamic load. When a team cannot validate its simulations with real track behavior, the risk of misjudging floor compression increases significantly. The lack of complete data left McLaren with an imperfect understanding of how aggressively the car would press into the asphalt during the race. McLaren also pointed to the possibility of minor structural disturbances caused by race contact. Oscar Piastri suffered an early collision that forced him to pit with a damaged tire. While the visible damage seemed limited to the wheel, the team considered whether that impact transmitted energy into the lower structure of the chassis and subtly altered the behavior of the floor. Even a slight shift in stiffness or alignment can increase skid block wear by changing how the surface meets the track under load. The officials acknowledged that accidental damage can influence wear, but confirmed that this does not reduce a team's obligation to present a legal car at every stage of competition. The characteristics of the Las Vegas circuit amplified all of these issues. The layout features several long full-throttle sections where the car reaches maximum speed for extended periods. Under these conditions, aerodynamic load becomes more intense and more consistent. As a result, the suspension compresses for longer stretches of the lap, which holds the skid block closer to the asphalt. During the event, tire wear was far lower than predicted, which allowed both McLaren drivers to push at aggressive speeds for most of the race. Without tire degradation slowing the pace, the car remained in a high load state for longer, which further increased skid block contact and accelerated the wear rate. The officials reviewed McLaren's explanation but followed the exact procedure defined in the technical directive. They performed multiple measurements using certified tools with tolerances far smaller than the scale of the violation and repeated the tests in the presence of McLaren representatives. The numbers remained consistent and confirmed that the thickness of the skid block fell below the 9 mm requirement. Because previous cases earlier in the season had resulted in the same penalty for identical circumstances, the officials were required to maintain consistency and apply the standard disqualification. There is no flexibility in this section of the rulebook because competitive fairness depends on absolute enforcement. The final conclusion is that McLaren set the car too aggressively for the specific demands of the Las Vegas circuit and did not leave enough margin to absorb the unexpected oscillations, reduced practice time, and potential structural disturbances during the race. The differences in thickness were extremely small, but modern Formula One operates in a world of microscopic tolerances where even fractions of a millimeter can create performance differences. The regulation exists to preserve equality, and once the measurements confirmed the breach, the officials had no alternative. The miscalculation transformed a strong weekend into the pivotal moment that reshaped the championship.